May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Derhovanesian,
Here.
Oshagan,
Yes.
Sadorian,
Present.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian.
Yes.
The agenda for the September 20th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on September 17th, 2018. Item 2, consent items at 2A, approval of regular meeting minutes from August 16th, 2018.
Great. So we have both the meetings from our last commission meeting and our special meeting that took place at Brand Library and Art Center. So if you have any feedback, questions, or we can entertain a motion.
I sent you a couple of minor modifications that were so trivial that I didn't think I needed to go over them.
Is this for the 24th, the special
The
meeting?
special, right.
Okay.
Chair Sakian, maybe the commission consider at least the regular minutes first.
Sure. Let's take it one at a time. So we have the regular meeting, August 16, 2018. If we have a motion for that set of minutes.
I move to approve if no one has any objections.
I second it.
Okay.
Great. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Derhovanesian,
Yes.
Oshagan,
Yes.
Zadorian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian.
Yes. And now we're back to our special meeting, August 24th. They are a little bit different than our traditional minutes. We had a long extended meeting to talk about the implementation of the Public Art Master Plan. So if we have a motion on that, if they have questions, changes.
I do think some of the bullets were not as clear as it should be. That's why I would like to see that we would have time to go over it and then possibly for next meeting to finalize it.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that, but I sent mine in because it was nuances. Like, for example, on the first one where it says, make changes, I thought, we're not trying to change the commissions, we just want to clarify certain things. And so there were some verbiage expansions I included, and I don't think it really changed the meaning of anything that much. It was just for the record, wanting to. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, what are our options in terms of, can we maybe either bring it back at the end of the meeting or table it for our next commission meeting?
Yes, Chair Sakian, you can do either. You can, if you want to do it at the end and take everybody's comment now in public, or it can be brought back on the next regular meeting to make changes to.
Does Commissioner have a preference how to proceed?
Is it possible, since I had some, and maybe, I don't know if anyone else did, but Commissioner Derhovanesian and I did, so maybe would it be legal to revise them based on that and bring them back, or is that outside the boundaries of the Brown Act?
It would be preferable that it's done here, at a meeting in public, and then everybody votes on
I
it.
see. Okay.
Well, I would like to see if we could, in more detail, write all the notes and come next meeting and one by one to go through if need be, or the ones that need modification or explanation we would add, so it would stay on file that what was actually requested. And yes, some verbiage also makes it not as clear as what was said. And since we have spent such a long time to get all of this in place and now we are finalizing it, I think it would be nice to finalize it for the next commission meeting. And then it would be both public and also it would be a well thought, carefully evaluated. If everybody else agrees, if the chair also agrees and vice chair.
So it sounds like there are some concerns about it. I do want to remind our commission that these are minutes to kind of capture what was discussed during the meeting. But really what matters is our agenda item today to actually get down to what we are going to implement for the program. So we can bring it back at the next commission meeting, and in the meantime, if we can be prepared with
If I could say
comments.
that, these minutes are like notes on a meeting. So if you look at the minutes from our last regular meeting, there are no such notes. It's just like this was said very clearly. So this is like, all these notes are added to the regular minutes. So I'm not sure if we need to be really precise that, oh, I said this, I said, I didn't say do it, today, I might do it, I said something, do in short term, but I really meant long term. I think I don't know if we want to go into those details, because we could spend all day fixing these notes, as we spend all day talking about it, brand. So I don't know,
Well, I don't think
I'm
we
not
need
sure
the whole
what
day,
makes
though.
sense.
We have already itemized what was there. A little bit modification or verbiage would clarify, that's for sure. But the fact is that at least we would be sure on the short term and midterm and finalize what was said, which was as important to all of us. So we don't need to go through all of it. It would just...
I think, we should focus on the egregious
Yes.
errors or omissions, rather than the details of, this or that, you used this word or that word, I didn't quite say that, and things like that. That's what I would suggest, or else literally we're going to be here all day.
Yeah, so we don't want a special meeting ongoing, it's just to finalize what are the corrections or what are the actual absolute changes that we see there for the next session. That's it.
So why don't we, just for the sake of time, because we should get to our agenda, let's bring this back at our next regularly scheduled meeting. In the meantime, please do prepare your comments and changes. And as Commissioner Orsagon said as well, this is just minutes. What's going to matter is what we actually vote on doing. So let's not worry too much about the fine details, but if there's something that's really a mistake, let's correct it. So we'll bring it back, or I think we need a motion to bring it back to.
Can I just make a comment? Keep in mind that it was not televised or recorded. So I think when Yvonne types up the minutes from these meetings, she's able to listen to it and really memorialize it in a different way. These were notes that were typed up by Maria, our marketing director, that was there, just trying to capture as much as she could. So I don't know that there's a way to verify exactly what was said.
Well, there might be a couple things that weren't said that are said in the minutes, and I think those should be corrected.
Oh, okay. But, I mean, there's no way to verify is all I'm saying, because we didn't record that
'Cause there's no,
meeting.
Yeah, but we are here, the ones who have said it and suggested it are sitting on the dais, and we can help to make sure that what was said is captured properly, so.
So we'll bring it back at our next regularly scheduled meeting. We want to make sure the record is correct, and commissioners can, at that meeting, provide those changes, and we can vote on these minutes.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to next item, please.
Item 3, introduction of presentations. At 3A, Library Arts and Culture events presented by Chuck White, Community Relations Manager.
Good afternoon, Chair Sahakian, Commissioners, City staff, and visitors. I'm going to give you a brief overview of really a number of great upcoming programs we have at the Library Arts and Culture Department, primarily focused on the arts. I'll start out with our Reflect space at Downtown Central Library. We are in the midst of Elevate, a celebration of the centennial of the Homenetmen group. That's, again, at our Central Library, and it only lasts a couple of weeks. There was a big opening on the 16th, and it will be done at the end of this month. Following that, Reflect Space will have an exhibition called Body Politics. It actually runs from October 5 through November 21, with an opening reception on Friday, October 12th at 7 p.m. And Body Politics showcases the work of 6 international artists and documentarians exploring themes of sexual identity and the narrative of the body as a form of political control. Body Politics traces how the body in its individual and collective forms serves as a catalyst, canvas, and symbol for political action and expression in LGBTQ communities. Here's something we're promoting all month. It's back to school month, and so we're promoting lynda.com. Some of you may be aware of this online service It is free with your Glendale library card. It focuses on business, creativity, and technology. Has more than 6,300 on-demand video courses taught by professionals to build professional skills across a vast range of job functions. And I printed out kind of the basic list just to find all the arts videos. There's 2 and 3D drawing, animation of various kinds of audio courses. There's courses on cameras, courses on photography, design of one kind or another, digital publishing, drawing, illustration, live performance, music production. I said photography, songwriting. There's even a class on ukulele. So it's not just the tech side of life, and there's certainly a great deal in there if you want to learn CAD or how to build an app or just how to use an Excel spreadsheet. You can find it here on lynda.com. But there's also just a large number of great arts tools, or tools for the artist. So that's lynda.com. We're showcasing that, but that's available 24 hours a day on our website. Let me see, tonight, if you're not busy, Thursday, September 20th at 7 p.m. at our downtown Central Library Auditorium, we're going to have a great talk. It's the Glendale Historical Society's Royal Revival's home tour. Marks the 10th anniversary of Glendale's first historic district on scenic Royal Boulevard. And this free talk on period revival architecture will be given by the president of the Associates of Brand Library. That's 7 o'clock tonight at the Central Library. There are a number of docent tours that go on at the Brand Library. The next one is this Saturday on the 22nd. The next one's Saturday, October 20th. They start on early in the morning. Wear comfortable shoes. They give you a nice walk around the facility up there. Brand has expanded since they reopened in 2014 to include a number of arts and music programming for children and families. Again, on Saturday at 10:30, there's a group called the Beat Buds. There are a couple of musicians who come in. They do song and dance and get kids playing music. It's a lot of fun. That's at Brand Library. Artillery is it's an arts magazine. They call themselves the only art magazine that's fun to read. Well, you be the judge of that, but you can celebrate their next issue at a party, a launch party at the Brand Library on Sunday, the 23rd, from 3 to 7. It looks like it will be a lot of fun, and it's a nice kind of combination to have it up there at Brand Library. So that's free to the public. Brand Library will also have an art and music book sale. That's at the end of the month, the last Saturday, the 29th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's plenty of parking at the Brand Library, so there's really no excuse. Get up there and buy a used CD or a print or an art or music book. On Saturday, October 6th, there will be a hands-on, hands-off, interactive music experience with an instrument called the Theremin. The speaker says it's the first electronic instrument developed actually in the 1920s. It's played without being touched. You put your hand close to it or take it far away, and it's connected to a sound source, and it generates a sound based on kind of your electrical vibe, your wave of the hand. So that's Saturday, October 6th. Brand works on paper. Brand 46 is ongoing right now. It's a great show. You should get up there and see it. They have a number of ancillary programs, and there's one that's for Brand Associates members only. It's in conjunction with Antias Theater Company. You're invited to a reading of the Tony Award-winning play Art. Glendale's Antaeus Theater Company members, directed by Gigi Birmingham, will present this engrossing play, which explores how an almost totally white painting disrupts the long-standing relationship of three friends when it raises questions of aesthetics, class, and interpersonal history that cannot be ignored. There's a real fun wine and cheese reception following the reading, or followed by the reading. I bring this up because you can become an associate's member, and then you can bring a friend, and you can go to this program. Next, also in conjunction with the Brand 46 Works on Paper, is Fear No Art. It's a panel discussion on collecting art. And so if you have any interest in this, you have questions, how do I get into collecting art? This is the panel discussion to see. That's October 18th. That's a Thursday evening at 6:30, Brand Library. Something to put on your calendars. Friday, October 5th, will be the exhibition party for the 43rd Assembly District's photography competition. So that's, again, at Adams Square Mini Park, Friday, October 5th. I do not yet have a time, but we will. Submissions are coming in from everybody in the 43rd District, including residents of Glendale. The Assembly member wants photos that depict, your neighborhood, the district. So those will be not only shown at the mini park, but they will also be on display in Sacramento for some time. So you can check that out on our website and download the application. The submissions close at the end of September. The Big Draw LA. That's it, and well, really, it's an international program. It's a month-long series of drawing experiences for all ages, children, families, teens, and adults. And we are very happy to once again participate in the Big Draw. I should go back. That we're going to have. There's so many programs. I can't mention them all. We're going to draw chalk outside some of our libraries. We're going to do yarn work. One of our staff is going to teach a class in putting art on Post-its. That's Joe there with his Post-its. We've had good success with this. It's a way for our staff to kind of combine a number of great drawing programs and present them at one time. This year, Brand Library is very much a part of this program. There are a number of programs up there for adults. So that's something you want to look at on our website. We always get a good crowd for our children's events, but we hope to do well with the adults also. In the future, coming up, November 3rd, the city of Glendale will celebrate Dia de los Muertos on the newly named Artsock Paseo. That street that's closed down just above Wilson, or below Wilson and above Broadway. There'll be a number of events on November 3rd. Leading up to that, a main event on November 3rd, there will be a number of events at our library, primarily the Downtown Central Library. Here's a picture. The image shows an altar, basically, a piece of art on the right-hand side. It's called an ofrenda, and it's traditionally used to celebrate and remember people who are no longer with us. And that's Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. So this is something we did at Pacific Park Library. We will actually have a large-scale ofrenda installation at the Downtown Central Library the last week of October. So come in there and drop off a picture and say a few kind words for some long-lost relatives or friends, and just enjoy kind of the fun aspect of Dia de los Muertos. And then on November 3rd, again, Artsoc Paseo from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock. There'll be music, mariachis, ballet folklorico, skull decorating and face painting. I hope you can all make it. It should be a lot of fun. It's a unique way to use that closed area up there. That's about it for the upcoming events. There were a lot. I'm happy to say they're all arts related.
That's great. Thank you for the report. There is a lot going on and a lot coming up, so looking forward to all these events. Any comments before?
Just very proud of our city to have so many different activities planned, and especially library and brand, both. That is great. I wish and I hope everybody else in other cities would know how much is being done here. And so would all the citizens of Glendale too. Sometimes they are not really aware of how much effort and staff time and really work is put together. We are becoming, I hope they would appreciate it, but you know, we are becoming a hub not for art and different kind of presentations, I feel. And thank you to the staff and the city as well.
Great. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications. There is none. Item 5, business agenda. At 5A, action item. 5A1, discuss and provide direction to staff on the 2019-2020 work plan.
Want an introduction? No. Great. So we, our last meeting was a special meeting at the Brand Library and Arts Center so that we can spend some time as a work session and go through the urban art program plan and narrow it down to what is going to be our short-term work plan for 2019 and 2020. So we spent all day meeting and have lots of notes from that day, and staff has worked very hard to narrow that down into the draft that's in front of us today. And thank you to staff for setting up the meeting and also all the work in between the meeting and today. And just, you know, for us, you know, there's going to be a discussion so we can kind of look at what we have now and narrow it down even further, but we are not voting on this today. So it's just an opportunity for us to have a discussion, see what we like, what we don't like, what we want to be short-term, what maybe needs to become long-term, so that we give staff enough feedback so that hopefully between now and next meeting, we have a much better grounds for where we stand in terms of a work plan that hopefully could be presented to council at some point once it's approved by commission or recommended by commission. So with that, we can open it up. Maybe what we can do is, if there's any initial comments, or we can go through each section of the plan. We have staffing, policy, inventory, ID maintenance, marketing and branding, and programming. And then we also have some midterm and long-term goals, which is good to talk about, but will not necessarily be something that's done in the next 2 years. But it's good to know where we're going. So with that, I'll open it up if there's some introductory comments or if anybody wants to dive right into the work plan.
Just one thing that we need to bring to everybody's attention who is watching us is that the long-term, mid-term, and short-term, it also depends on staffing as well, because whatever is decided not to be taken care of right away is not because it is of less interest and importance, it's just because there is more staffing time needs to be used to be able to do that. So we all are aware of that, but I wanted the audience to have an understanding of why things become short-term, mid-term, and long-term, basically.
Well said, and one of the first recommendations is to hire a full-time administrator. And so some of the decisions we make with this plan is what can happen with the current staffing we have, with an eye for what happens when we have a full-time administrator that can oversee the program. Very good comment, Commissioner Darwanesian. Yes, Commissioner Oshida.
Yeah, so I think in terms of a document and sort of the nuts and bolts that we spoke about, I think this is good. It's a very good summary. Very well done. I know we spoke like all over the map, and condensing it down into this document was a feat, and so we appreciate it, the staff for doing that. But I want to mention that as a document that puts out a plan that this is what we want to do, it's kind of missing a very important part of that. We want to bring art to the community. right? So this is all sort of the sort of nuts and bolts, the staffing that we need to do. Clearly, it's very, very critical for our work, the policy and inventory, these things. But I think like there are these bullets on there, how to hire a full-time administrator, we need something that says we want to bring art to the community, and this is the kind of way we want to do it. We want to hire, until we get the full-time administrator, we kind of want to hire consultants to do this, to have the, besides the roster, what is this next step after the roster? To find the consultants, to hire the consultants, to find places where art can go, find the artists. This is kind of a process. If this is going to be a document that is going to speak about what we're going to do, I mean, that's kind of the thing that's really important to have in here. I think it's implied between us because this is what we're doing. But if we're going to take this document and say, hey, somebody from West Hollywood comes up to me and says, what are you guys doing in Glendale? I said, we're doing this. It doesn't really explain what we're doing, right? So I think that's kind of an important
And more
thing
so,
to add in there. Yeah?
after years, we might not, definitely, we are not always going to be on this dais. So it needs to be clear enough for whoever comes and takes our spot would be clear on what was exactly thought about. Because this is, after a year of long endeavor, we got, our master plan, so it needs to be more clear.
Yeah. Like, based on the plan that was developed, the work plan by Barbara and Associates, based on these things, this is what we're going to do in terms of doing the art in the community. I think it's really important.
So I know a lot of these things we discuss is exactly what you just said. It doesn't really base anything off art. It's a lot of things that we have to do to get these pieces out. So what I'm wondering is, what can we do that would not have to do with a staff person, that we can get taken care of in the next year or two without a staff person between the 5 of us? Is there some kind of temporary piece that we can put out without a staff person? Just a call for an artist to do, like, let's say the Glendale theme piece that feeds off of social media frenzy or whatever. I know we had all kind of agreed upon that one central location that has one main piece that draws people to Glendale, that says Glendale or whatever it might be, like the I Heart Amsterdam. So maybe we can focus on one thing that we might not need a staff person for, and kind of get that out. So we see some kind of work being done.
I completely agree with you. And I think the way to do that is that we can't do that. We have to hire a consultant. So we can start the process. The consultant, in my opinion, will take the place of the full-time administrator until we get the full-time administrator. So when we have a list of consultants that we can maybe look over, and then we have to collectively develop a request for qualifications, RFQ? No, RFP, proposal, right? I always get them mixed up. Proposals, and then we see who applies, and then we can hire this person so that we can move forward.
Because that would technically be a contracted worker, which would work within the bounds of what we are able to do and hire.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so we look at everybody who proposes something, who proposes to work in Glendale, and then we figure out which one is going to best reflect our opinion of what kind of art we want in Glendale, and then we can hire this person, at least in the short term, the next couple of years, to get the thing started. I think it's critical to show that, here it is, this plan, we did it, we're really starting to work on it very quickly.
And in that area also, I have a little question there, because prior to this, whenever we are hiring a consultant to do any of the things that was decided on this dais, 1 or 2 commissioners would also sit on the panel of the people we were choosing. And then it is finalized by the department. But reading whatever it was here, that was not clear. It seemed that everything is left completely to the department. So I want little things of that nature to be also, now it could be a commission or a board or whatever. Then another question also, which I want my colleagues to clarify. There was a discussion about having another art board or whatever, how it was worded, I can't remember. But isn't commission already that board between the community and the city and the council? So do we need another board as well? We might need committees to help us to do stuff, but to have another art board as a board, to me, seemed kind of strange, or
not
maybe
sure
I'm
we
not
have.
clear on that.
I'm not sure we suggested that.
There
I don't
is
think that's
one
in,
of
where is this?
There is one that it is a suggestion that.
Where
we
is
should
it?
have
Where?
I can't find it,
Oh.
I'm not that quick. That's why I would like to take it home, and as I said, my eyes
Sure,
are
I
not
remember
that
that.
fast.
Could I-
So,
I think a community member suggested, okay, go ahead, sorry, go ahead. I don't think it brings up.
I think we agreed that we needed to engage the community.
Yes.
And probably have some community consultants that will rotate in and out of things like selecting artists and evaluating proposals. But I don't remember any secondary board
yes.
being involved here. It was more of, we serve on different committees within the city to help make sure that our opinions and the art strategy is present in the work that others are doing, but I don't remember the way you put it.
Yes, Commissioner Reader, absolutely, I agree. We need to have community involved. Just the word board was kind of, I'll find it, and next time I'll highlight it for you, because I was like a little bit surprised on that. But it could be misunderstood or not well expressed, or even because you guys, none of you thought about to have a board, but it was different committees. Most probably, it's a psychological missing of what we read. But I'll find it and I'll bring it to you. So just wanted to make sure that we are the board, but the committees are absolutely a necessity, because we need to include community in whatever we do. Besides the fact that we also represent the community, but we would need other groups with us.
Great, and I'll just add that I think, we have a new director for the department. We definitely want him involved in this process as well. But it may take some time until that full-time administrator is selected, vetted, recommended, approved, and then actually has a chance to get started. So perhaps that is one way to approach it, where we hire a consultant for maybe 6 months, maybe a year. They oversee what's possible here, what staff feels comfortable in terms of, outsourcing in some ways to them. Of course, they'll have to work very closely with staff. And then there will be a handoff at some point where the director can make a decision that either the consultant's great, we need it, keep them on because they can help support, the different needs we have, or the full-time administrator takes it on fully. But that's, probably a decision for later. But it's a good way to move quickly and not wait necessarily. And in terms of the first comment, Commissioner Ortegon, I agree with you. I think, in terms of just presentation, what I'd recommend, because we have staffing, policy, inventory, marketing, programming, what I'd recommend is kind of flipping it. So the what really is the programming. I think that's what the plan should lead with, because this is kind of what the public is going to receive from, the investments and the art we create. So if we could lead with that, and then the rest is kind of the how we accomplish it. What does the staffing look like to support it? What are the policies that have to support it? So the 2%, for example, the inventory, and then the marketing and branding, but those are kind of a little bit more internal, whereas the programming is really the public part, which I think is what is the most important. And then in terms of what's here, we have the Beyond the Box program, we have the Adams Square Mini Park, gas station, exhibitions. We have the Performing Arts Series. We have a temporary art program, which I think the most recent was the signage that was throughout Glendale. It'd be nice to see more of that. And then we have events. And then we have that landmark project, which was mentioned as well. So one thing I'd like to recommend is that we kind of tweak the plan where we have buckets. And the buckets that I'm seeing here is one that's a Performing Arts Series, and that includes Brandon Central Library. We have temporary art, which could be considered Beyond the Box, and other temporary art programs we want to add to this. One labeling I'd like to add is neighborhood arts, where Adams Square Mini Park falls under that, because we have talked about maybe down the road we can add more neighborhoods to that, but that's a process where we have to engage the neighborhoods, make sure there's buy-in, talk about what kind of art they want to see in that area, whether that be Montrose, South Glendale by Pacific Park, or another community. But that's something where we can add that on as we go. More neighborhoods can be involved in the process. And I want to make sure that Adams Square Mini Park is part of the plan. It's funded. The artists are compensated for their work. Then we have events, which we have here annual public event, but I know we've also talked about community events, so informing the public. And then the last one is the more permanent art, which is like that landmark piece, which I think we were all very excited about. Yes, Commissioner.
If I could add some, so I really like this idea of neighborhood arts, so we could have maybe a neighborhood arts and we can have a citywide arts kind of bucket, right? So we implement sort of this two-tier kind of thing where we do things in the neighborhood plus like the Big Bean, which we're gonna do one day. And the other big temporary arts that we do around Brand or Glen Oaks and on those places, or South Glendale, those become citywide kind of arts. So like neighborhood arts and the citywide arts, maybe.
What if we call it landmark arts? And that could include both that bean project that we talked about, but also we should be careful how we're phrasing this on, since people are watching. So we were talking about the Chicago bean, as that kind of level of art that, is iconic to that area.
And probably not the landmark either, because there's so much use of the word landmark to mean
That can
other
be mixed up with
things.
historic and other things.
Yeah, so not that historic landmarks couldn't be artified, but, like, we'll come up with a cute.
Yeah, but I agree with you.
Citywide, or we even, so, we are striving to be a regional art center, right? So maybe regional, I don't know, something that shows that we are looking to do something large.
That's the iconic,
Iconic.
Or maybe staff can,
defines the city for everybody in the world. Glendale is this.
all that in one word, if you can find that word for it.
Piece of art.
Well,
Maybe
maybe
staff can
maybe a
wordsmith
couple.
Some kind of-
yeah.
I don't know, this might be a pie in the sky. The citywide, when we talk, all these big constructions that has been done in Glendale, and most of them, the bottom floors, the stores, whatever, they're all vacant and empty, and kind of it looks so empty. So I don't know, I can't find the word.
Well,
It
that could fall under the temporary art category.
Yes, so if we could have, there are
That
many
exists.
artists in the community who beg to have a place to show their work. So we could create some kind of responsibility. I don't know legally how that works, but to use those spots. Years ago, we used to do that. I've forgotten the program with the planning department. We're doing it. And it was good because it was a publicity for the building also, because people went there to see the artwork that was on the exhibit. They also, the facility and the stores and whatever they can offer to the community. And meanwhile, our artists were happy to have those exhibits. So what was it called, Chuck? Do you remember? We did it
was
with
the
the planning
vacant
department.
storefront.
It's called what?
There was
Vacant
Gate.
storefront. There was a name
No,
for it, though.
before that, before it was.
Gate.
It was the Gate.
Gate.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And interestingly, it was at the site where the artists came in to pitch their new artwork at the California Pizza Kitchen. It was that whole facility that was filled, their windows and so forth
Yes.
on the street upstairs were filled with art. That was the Gate.
So we have so many spots. Yeah, I mean, it's good publicity for the owners of the building as well, because, that's really, you go inside their store and you see what is being offered, So, and then artists would have, because all artists complain because there is no spot for them to show their art, which is at a cost efficient or whatever. And it would take a long time till we get the museum and all the other stuff. So why not to utilize whatever as a, whatever you said, citywide art?
Citywide.
Because those buildings are all over Glendale, and then nothing is being used. I don't know what are the legalities, Mike, but basically, those are things that we can utilize, and it doesn't take that much, I think, effort. And we could, even commissioners, my suggestion was, before commissioners were really hands-on involved, now that we don't have the full-time staff, maybe we still would have our commissioners get hands-on involved. I don't know, again, if legally that is okay, but that is something that I would wish to see. It's not just once a month to be here and do yay and nay on issues, but to be part of what happens. Yes.
Could we maybe start with, the neighborhood thing seems very appealing because we're trying to roll this out and get people excited about it. So maybe we could do something that relates to that neighborhood thing. And a couple weeks ago, I think it was right after we had our meeting, I think I sent Nikki and I don't remember who I sent it to, but it was a couple of different ways the city divides up its neighborhoods, like there are names and they're already being used and they have this grid, and we should use that, I think, because then we'll be consistent in our definitions and it'll then nobody has an excuse not to jump on, because they know these neighborhoods already. And then we do like an Artify thing where we maybe go out and start doing dog and pony shows about what the plan is, and maybe engage the community to get out on the street and start to find things and think of ideas they want. And this is, in and of itself, an outreach program. This isn't an art project. It's part of the branding publicity thing that we fan out in the city and get the neighborhoods to start giving us input and ideas, because Adams Square is fairly well developed and we kind of know that one, but there's something like 25 or 30 neighborhoods in Glendale, maybe even more, and it would be nice to maybe, in order of priorities of some kind, start to try to get them to artify themselves, where they say, oh, look, that, utility over there could be painted, or, something like that. The simple, non-complicated things. I know we have the big public art iconic, but this is just one of those kind of low-hanging fruit things we could start with.
So,
And could I ask something? The lady that was at our meeting, it is for the publicity or public relations, it would be great, we used to do that before, that, our staff person would be in touch with businesses in City of Glendale. And businesses in the City of Glendale would support some of those programs and activities, or they could financially, whatever, provide something, or they could throw in different, whatever. The way Adams Square, the whole community gets involved and they get things done, and I'm very proud of them. It's just, in the other areas, maybe they're much wider, much bigger. It's not as cozy as Adams Square, but maybe businesses would be able to help us with those stuff, because we need to not only engage all artists, but we need to engage people who could support the artists, because that is very important. And that would be a publicity for them. They have all these commercials, they pay millions of dollars on TVs and etc. Well, to be a person that sponsors, it would help to promote their businesses as well, and they can come to the commission as well. We could introduce them, they could talk about their plans. We need to get involved, everybody, the producers.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
That, when I was thinking about community, I was thinking about the Kenneth Village Merchants Association, the Montrose Shopping Park, entities that we can talk to.
Yes, that would be great.
Commissioner Chico?
Yeah, so I think, for instance, the neighborhoods thing that Commissioner Vidal was talking about, you would probably need a particular type of consultant who would go to the neighborhoods and figure out what you can do in a neighborhood, right? That would be his forte, to relate to communities and figure things out, and where to place art and to do something like that. And then somebody who's going to do sort of a citywide, more iconic thing, there would be somebody different who would be in touch with a wider, maybe art circle, who would know maybe some international artists and people like this, people who do if we want to do technology art, cutting edge kind of technology art, things like that, they would be in touch with people like that who would be bringing a different type of art into the city.
Not the flowers?
Not the
It's a personal joke.
flowers that do something different than what they do now. So I think, this is what I'm trying to, figuring it out, the vision of it in my head as we speak, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
we could have these two kinds of people that we find to help us move this plan forward, like immediately, and then, when the full-time administrator comes along, then they could do this thing, maybe all of it.
So just for clarity, because when you say citywide, because in my head, I'm thinking you do kind of smaller scale neighborhood specific art programs, just like we have in Adams Square Mini Park, maybe a different version of it, depending on what that individual neighborhood wants. And then I think citywide, we're probably thinking the same thing, but I'm thinking more large scale downtown probably.
Yeah, large scale downtown, right, exactly. More people, so not a neighborhood, but like more commercial districts, where you do big things and maybe even permanent things, right? You do something, I'm not sure exactly what, but that's what it would be, yeah. Along main boulevards that everybody owns, right? Not just the small neighborhoods, Brand all the way down to the south and to the north, and Montrose, places like that, and Glen Oaks. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think we are. We're on the same page. We'll figure it out. We have a couple meetings to figure it out.
Montrose does
So,
a great job. They do. They bring in artists from all over. They come and
For the-
show their work. The 2-day art fairs that
The art fair that they do,
yes,
yeah.
they bring all kinds, from the designers to painters to makeup artists to jewelry.
Yeah,
And
so
they
I think we
bring
need
the
to work
most
with them.
phenomenal and unique stuff, and people go there the moment they know that it's on, because it's not only whatever you can buy in Glendale. They bring in things that you can have to go all over, Los Angeles or even beyond to be able to get, so, and the music and the fun. So we need to kind of check with them and see how it's done. It just, our legal advice should tell us how we would do that and what is acceptable and et cetera, and we will go ahead.
And if I could continue, and I would also very much agree with what Commissioner Saligan said about moving the programming to the beginning. So that's kind of what's missing here, and sort of restructuring it, and maybe not calling it programming, calling it something a little more, I don't know, something else. We can think about that, more engaging, more interesting, more expansive, let's say. That would be at the front, and then these would support, everything else would support that programming effort.
That's right. Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent idea.
Yeah, and then, in the staffing items here on the, there's no page number here, but after the programming page, it says the commission was in agreement that a consultant could be contracted to complete the short-term and most easily implemented projects. So we already talked about that. It's already in here. And that's a matter of, that's probably not a staffing in my mind. I think maybe that's more of a programming thing, that the programming needs that kind of support to move forward.
Are we doing
Okay.
the 2019-20 immediate work plan now, or are we? Yeah, okay. So is the ultimate goal of today to actually put things in this? No, okay.
We're just discussing.
So we're going to just go over the list.
It's good to know where we're going,
Yeah.
because, for example, let's say we start neighborhood arts. The short term could be to add one more neighborhood in the next 2 years. And then from there, it might be adding a new neighborhood per year, every year, where, we have the staff in place, we have more resources ready. We've built that model, we know how it works, and you can grow it faster. So it's good to know where we're going, but this is really the 2019-2020 work plan.
Right. So we could take one thing we know we're going to do, like some of this low-hanging fruit that we are either restarting from when we put it on hold, and then things that we already said, we're going to immediately do this, and start to maybe drill down, like, okay, the neighborhoods we want to artify are Adams Square, which already has kind of a program going, and this one, and this one, and this one, like maybe pick out, 2 for each year, or something like that. Does that make sense? I mean,
They could be done in parallel.
Or,
Right?
you
I mean,
know,
if we have the resources.
yeah, if we had the
we could
resources, but
do
at lea-
and we're-
we probably should,
Fairmont Park.
under-promise and over-deliver, so we don't, go, oh my God, we're not, we know we're resource constrained, so, we'll seek out 4, and if we can get 2 done, that would be great.
If I can kind of summarize some of the things I've heard, so hopefully maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but hopefully it helps in one way or another. If we look at the programming section, Beyond the Box is something we already do.
Yeah.
We've made some suggestions on minor tweaks, improvements. Adams Square Mini Park, it's something we do, but we want to make sure it's funded, and we've made some minor suggestions and tweaks. And same with the Performing Arts Series. I think the general consensus was, in the future, maybe we'd want to expand it to more areas, but for now, let's continue the Brand Library one, because it's very successful, and we want to make some improvements to the downtown Central Library one. But basically, both programs are continuing. Temporary art with a contemporary art focus, that's the big question mark. I think in the past also, it wasn't very well defined, and I think partially because we were going to do call for artists and see kind of what opportunities are out there. Commission annual public event, we do not currently do, so we want to make sure that happens soon. And then the landmark art project, which is more of a long-term vision, the work has to start now, and I think that's why it's here. There's a lot of study, discussions, outreach that needs to be done to kind of figure out what is that iconic art that is going to define Glendale. It's going to attract people here. It's going to make people want to take a picture with it, and it's going to, really be a symbol for Glendale. So, piggybacking on Commissioner Vador's recommendation, what we could do is we could start off with an annual public event, possibly, well, it would have to be spring, because I'm assuming it will take us a couple months To finalize this, then it has to go to council as a recommendation. So really, none of this will start till 2019. So maybe in spring, we do an outreach event where we're talking about the public art master plan. We really try to make sure those neighborhood leaders are at that meeting,
Yeah,
so we can
legwork
start
up
that
front.
discussion.
Legwork up
Yeah,
front.
exactly. Because, one thing also that's very important is we keep council involved from the beginning as well. And so I don't want us to start choosing neighborhoods from now. I think it's premature for that. We really need to start that conversation with the neighborhoods, start the conversation with council, see where the priorities are. Maybe there are other city projects that are happening where you can, leverage both things happening at once and it might work out. So maybe in the plan, it's really, solidify Adams Square Mini Park and look to add one more neighborhood in this next work plan. And what that neighborhood will be, how it'll look, I think that's all for implementation, not for us to really solidify yet until we have more details and more of a conversation. We also don't want to just drop art on a neighborhood, without having that conversation with the neighborhood and seeing what they want.
If I could interject, Fairmont Park, right, the Parks Department is already putting foundations for art. So that's a low-hanging fruit that
That was-
we could do,
Yeah,
like,
that was in the
immediately.
minutes.
Yeah.
But is that a performing arts?
No,
Event
that's a
or-
neighborhood arts.
Neighborhood arts, okay.
Neighborhood arts. It'll be in the park, and so I think neighborhood arts makes sense that they would start in the park, at least be.
But I think that's something that with a consultant on board, we'd be in a better position to, make those choices and.
Yeah, yeah. Do it,
But that's definitely an opportunity that's there now.
So in the notes that I made, we'd move programming up to the top. Maybe it's called Public Art and Events as a title. And then what I made notes of was that there were 5 buckets, which were performances or performance series, whatever you want to call it. And we could do like bullets underneath, including brand and one additional neighborhood performance series or something like that.
Performance arts, you can say.
Number 2, establish temporary art. And again, there could be bulleted suggestions under that. Number 3 was the neighborhood arts / citywide arts, whatever we want to call that. And that's where you could have mini park gas station. You could have other neighborhood, like a suggestion to expand that under that category. Number 4 was events, unless you want that to fall under performance series, or if the annual event would, so that could be a 4th category. And then 5 was permanent art.
And one change I'd recommend though is, so in terms of, I do want to kind of maintain the integrity of neighborhood arts for what that's actually intended for, because I feel like when we combine citywide and neighborhood, we're kind of saying everything art for everyone and everywhere. So I'd prefer that neighborhood art stays on its own, and then,
Art for everyone and everywhere.
I would
should
suggest,
be the new
how about
tagline.
this large-scale citywide arts? Is that better?
unless that becomes part of the permanent.
Yeah, is that part of
No.
permanent art or no?
No, I see it different. Like, permanent art is a long process.
So would it be part of the
Temporary.
established temporary art?
So I
And
don't think that's a
where-
I think it could be either. So I don't think temporary art is a category by itself. Right? I think the way we're
Temporary art
thinking.
is on its own, and neighborhood arts is on its own right now.
Oh, is that, well,
Well,
really?
it may not be.
Yeah.
Five commissioners,
That's
so
what I was
we should
hearing.
discuss that.
You guys saying. So,
Temporary, neighborhood arts could be temporary, citywide arts can be temporary. So I see like performing arts, neighborhood arts, citywide arts, and then landmark art.
Bulleted
Landmark.
as different ones that you.
And so
comment on.
inside, neighborhood could be temporary, it could be permanent even. You could have a permanent thing in a park, a little thing in a park, permanent,
Okay.
right? There's nothing against that, right? And then citywide could be temporary or permanent, and then the big project.
Yeah. I mean, the citywide, like we talked, this is something that just particularly interests me, I don't know why, but public utilities that, even the banners the city puts up and things that are on the street permanently are very artless. And, we all notice that. And that maybe we could expand and expound on that, because public utilities has to start thinking about what they're going to do and what they're willing to do. We already tanked with the street crossing thing, and I, at some point, would certainly like to bring that back. But, while I was looking at it, I thought, the other day in Pasadena, I saw a garbage truck with a beautiful piece of art on the side. And it's like this garbage truck is going down the street, and it has this beautiful work of abstraction on it. And I'm like, wow.
Look at that
Garbage
garbage.
trucks are so cool in Pasadena, and, I thought, like, let's make a really big list, and then, meet with them and say, this is our vision, so what can we start working on now? I don't think we'll get anywhere unless we, get in their face right away.
See, that would be like a citywide art kind
That
of
would
thing.
be a
'cause it's
citywide
going all
thing.
over the city,
And
right? It's
maybe-
mobile, and it fits
Yeah.
in that category very nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question in that area. For citywide, we need to make sure, I don't know, again, Mike, we discussed that, there needs to be this understanding between all the departments that, for such events, they would include the commission on that. So, and you said that that should be added in the policy, something of that nature. Am I right?
Chair Sakian and Commissioner Nessian. At some point, the 2% art and the policies can be rewritten, and the various city departments can be listed in it that, will be participating, and their role and responsibility will be also listed in it.
Okay. Because to be able to participate in citywide and even banners and even trash trucks or et cetera, all of that needs the thing that different departments would invite commission to be part of the decisions, or even for the parks. They used to do that. I don't know if they still do it, but they included commissioners from the art and culture also for decisions made. So the collaboration, when you want it citywide, it has to be first within the city departments, that it is kind of well understood and defined, and then from then on, it would kind of be implemented. I see that a must. Otherwise, I don't think we'll get anywhere. We'll just talk here, and everybody would do their own stuff, and, people would not be as happy.
In terms of the policy as well, I think, some of these really will require, our director's input as well. And so, I believe we'll have a little bit of time before this is approved where we can get some of the feedback, but, he may be better positioned to give us advice on what should be part of the plan, what's more of an informal thing that could be discussed between fellow staff members. Because, for example, the approval review of guidelines for interdepartmental arts projects, while we as commissioners think that's a great idea, and I think we all agree on that, but it involves a lot of people's buy-in, and so I don't think we on our own can include that in a work plan personally and kind of dictate that that's how it's going to be. But that's something maybe more we can give the charge to our director to say, if that's something you can take on as an initiative and work with us so that we can have more of an influence in the processes
That's
internally.
correct. Well said.
And then I think the 2%, I think we're all in agreement to make that a recommendation. And then student member of the commission, you all know how I feel about it, but is everybody okay to include that in the work plan?
Well, is this, as a voting body, we need an uneven number, so I'm assuming this is an ex officio non-voting person?
Non-voting.
Yes.
Non-voting, yeah. It would presumably be someone that, for a period of time, maybe 6 to 9 months, would serve in a non-voting capacity, but would be a bridge with our school district and student artists.
Well, definitely that's a great idea, but again, prior to this, years ago, we had one commissioner assigned. Right now, we have the blessing, we have you here on board, but since the two major government bodies in the city is the city and the school district, we used to have one commissioner appointed that represented, that means had the right to vote as well. So was making sure that whatever is happening between the two is coordinated well. So hopefully in the future, if we can make it a group of 6, that's another story. I don't know how legally that works, but that would be ideal. Yet, meanwhile, till we get there, to have a non-voting student would also be great, because students can express some ideas, but the voting commissioner from the GOSD would be a blessing, because would make sure that everything is in coordination. So when we don't have you, we could have.
Great. Great, and I think that's also the intent. You have somebody younger.
Yeah,
that
the
looks
younger
at it from a different perspective.
That's
and
true. It could be
as
from
we're
community
making-
college as well,
yeah.
But to have a great link between school district and the city is also a must, especially in the area of culture and art, that they are educating the young people in those directions. So it would be great.
Mike, just in terms of direction for staff from that perspective, do we define now that it's, for this work plan, that it's GUSD, that it's GCC or GUSD?
Well, actually, Chair Sakian and Commissioners, the composition of this commission, including adding a student representative, would be subject to, the council's approval and through an amendment of the composition in Title II of the Glendale Municipal Code. So it would be a council item.
So we're just recording our intent and
Yeah,
council will make the decision?
Exactly.
Great.
And that we would like, that you would like to see the composition of this commission change to add an additional member.
Great.
Good to know, thank you.
And then similar for the workflow, I think. And then define municipal role in Maryland Paseo project, I think is another example where I think our director, without it being part of the work plan, can do that and inform the commission of, as things move forward.
And also the thing that that specific event that we want should not go under any other event. It should be a specific event, has nothing to do with all the different performances, et cetera. That should be a specific set bullet.
For the annual event?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I ask a question about the annual event? Maybe we could have a brief discussion, or if somebody could define what that event looks like, because I unfortunately didn't get to go, but I know that Glendale Arts put on a very big event. And, I'd love to hear from somebody who was there, because it's a big event, and maybe, is that an event, we don't want to have overlaps, especially where a lot of resources and energy has to be expended. So, for somebody who knows more about it than I do, is there any opportunity for us to create a synergistic relationship, and or is that a totally separate thing?
Okay. Could I elaborate a little bit on that? The first year that Glendale Arts had it, we actually participated. We paid to be part of that. Sort of, we hired them to do it as a kind of an art event. The second year, they did it independently, and they did a good job. But as a commissioner, or as an artist, or as a person very involved in the community, I considered that like a carnival. It was a fun thing, like a picnic and everything, you name it, it was there. To me, that was not an art event that signifies or is a signature event for the City of Glendale or for the Arts and Culture Commission. I would love to go and participate in their event and take all the family there, but that is not to me. To me, that's why I was suggesting that it should be a specifically art event, something that it includes every aspect of anything that has to do with aesthetics, something that adds value to any nature of anything, like from the arts, visual arts, performing arts, from jewelry, from fashion, from design, from even interior architecture. It should be something that specifically it's classy, it is something more meaningful rather than a picnic for the community. So art event, that would be something that people would come specifically for that, not to jump on the things and et cetera, to have barbecues and et cetera. That's great, it's fun, but it's not something that Art and Culture Department should be part of it, in my book. But we have other commissioners here, so I would expect something more of a value and structure rather than picnic and farm party and carnival. So.
Well, and on that note, actually, because I think, if I remember correctly, the first year was when I first joined the commission. And the way that process worked was we had put signature arts event as part of our work plan, so kind of what we're doing now. But we didn't really define what that signature art event was going to be.
Okay.
And we put out an RFP, and they were one of the consultants that applied. And so, we can all collectively decide how detailed we want to be from upfront about what we want to see, or we can open it up. But at least for the purpose of the work plan, we don't necessarily have to make that decision right now in terms of the exact specifics, but at least have a framework of, we want it to be Arts and Culture Commission only. Maybe you'd rather it be more of a collective, and we can have that, discussion about what we want to see.
Could I say something? I want it collective, but what I am saying is that it should specify, it should have the quality of what we could consider what City of Glendale and the Arts and Culture Department and Commission is offering in collaboration with community. It doesn't mean that we have to do it just by ourselves, but it is not a fun fair, it's not a carnival, it's not a family picnic. To me, that is done, it could be done by any organization in the world to get the people to bring enjoyment and whatever. But what we need to talk about, it is more like what I was continuously saying, like an expo of anything that has to do with art and design and technology that of the modern times that people come to see, to educate themselves about what goes on in the world and what goes on with artists in our city. That would be something that signifies it and it brings people. But going to parties and picnics is not. Of course, that year we did not have too many people who came to us. You know, that was one from the limited choices of people participated, Glendale Arts was the best. And even though nobody on the dais was really happy, because in their mind they thought of something else, but they enjoyed the event very much. So
So more of a formal Arts and Culture City of Glendale event.
of course, something that specifies our artists, specifies the city, the intent of the commission to bring in people from elsewhere, not for just jumping on those ropes and doing whatever, picnicking. It is to educate themselves of what is happening in the world in the form of art, what could be purchased, what could be participated. It is more of an elaborate, more kind of sophisticated nature to represent a city, because otherwise our city government has different parties. We have Christmas party, we have different parties, there's food parties, there's commissioner parties. But when we talk about Art and Culture Commission's event, we are talking about something that people would take home with them ideas or would be part of those ideas rather than just jumping and having fun with friends. It should be bringing enjoyment as well, but you know, it should not be that purpose.
I agree with you. It has to be, I think, very specific.
Yes.
But we have to be also careful because now they're calling the Open Music and Arts Festival signature event for Glendale. So I think when we speak about this, and we need to really, I think, speak at length, at depth, find our way of representing what we want to have done, and probably not call it a signature event anymore, but call it something else. We don't want to be competing. We don't want to be competing with something else that's going on in Glendale. So we want to find a complete different direction.
We either compete or
Maybe
cooperate.
even like a, what's that?
We either compete or cooperate.
Yes.
Yeah, we can cooperate. Or, I mean, maybe we do a big installation or some kind of artwork, and the opening would be the signature event that, now, it won't, I'm not going to call it signature anymore. The big kind of event that we would sponsor, for instance, right? So we commit to yearly having a large artwork installed someplace, and that would be our event.
That's true, because people would come and see that.
Because what they're doing is, you know, they brought 10,000 people. This is not a joke, right? They're at the level of competing with Cruise Night now. How many people come to Cruise Night? Maybe
10,000.
more. But maybe, you know, next year they could bring 15,000 people to Glendale. So this is a big number. It's a street fair. We don't want to do a street fair. We want to do an art kind of event.
Yeah, but
right?
you know what? People who make it a destination, when you talk about a destination, well, people of Glendale, that's one night we go out, we, again, spend ourselves buying food and doing stuff and walking around, and seeing cars, or the other ones, etc. But it should be something that people come for that 1 week to listen to music. Those who are music lovers, there's going to be all these musical things happening. All the theaters would have their things. All the art shows would be. So that means the whole city would be alive with art in their own specific ways. We don't necessarily need to hire them to do it. We need to get their cooperation. Let's say all the theaters that week, you're going to have all the presentations you have. Okay, for Glendale Arts to have all the musicals or whatever they choose to do. For the movies, so every industry that produces or provides any form of art would collaborate with us, and sort of our staff or even commissioners, we would program them. So people from all over the world or country, you know, that week, if they come and spend their time in Glendale, they would have a whole week of doing stuff. If I'm a businessman, or businesswoman, I come for the fashion part or whatever. If I'm a musician or music lover, and also invite people from outside. When we invite famous people to come to those events, people really do come. So
Like an
it
art
is,
week,
numbers
like
are good.
Tech week, art week. I mean, that could be something that we could do.
Yes, because
Not one
but
day
remember, art is
event,
not
but a
only
week.
just the things on the pedestal, but it is art in its big variety. That is something of quality. And I would travel anywhere that has that for a whole week, and I'll spend my time in the hotels, and I'll go to the restaurants. So it would bring in some revenue to the city as well, and to our artists too. Because people from within the city are saturated. They don't buy each other's art. But if people from outside come, they might find and discover artists in our community, and we could promote it. So.
Chair Sahakian?
Yes.
And Commissioners? I'm involved with Tech Week. I'm on the committee. And that to me is not a short-term goal. I think that's a mid to long-term, because I've seen the amount of staff time it takes to plan Tech Week. So I think it's a really good goal, but something that maybe we want to put on that list, because we definitely need, you'd have to hire a consultant probably full-time for I don't know what amount of time to plan to do it well and really promote it and get people to come. Or have the full-time administrator in place. But I think it's a great idea, but something that we should probably get on that list for down the road.
What I'd like to recommend too is that, because we've passed this public art master plan, council's passed the public art master plan. We want the community to know what we're doing. We want the community to be able to, approach us, give us their feedback, give us their ideas, even as we move forward. So maybe the way you plant the seed is that our short-term goal is to do like an open house style event, similar to some of the community meetings we've had, and we've had great turnout at those community meetings. So we know there's a lot of interest, but maybe with even more time and more planning, add a few elements that make it a little bit more exciting than a community meeting. Maybe that's an exhibition opening that in tandem you could do, or you could have a performer open it up. Find a different way to kind of get people to show up to it, but maybe even honor some artists. But you have some type of a community, and that's the kind of annual, or at least a one-time event that we build towards. We try to get people to. It's an opportunity for us to engage with the community, and then that's kind of the plan, the seed for the long-term, an arts week, and that might be, an open studio tour that week. It might be working with them, saying, hey, maybe it's leading up to your open art music festival, but that's something for long-term. But for at least a short-term, I think that's a doable thing next year at some point, to have that type of an annual meeting where we invite people in, tell them about the commission, educate the community, get their feedback, and it'll keep informing us as we move forward.
Do you want me to include in short-term trying to coordinate on Open Arts and Music Festival?
Yes, that would be great. I think it would be
Coordinate?
great,
What do you
at
mean?
least to open the doors for the discussion.
What do you mean?
It would be to meet with the people that plan it and somehow be involved. Because, that'd be one
Or at
way.
least have the discussion.
Yes.
Like, is this something that we should, leverage our limited resources with? And maybe it would look different, Obviously, this year, I think it really hit its stride because they had a lot of people.
Did you go?
No,
Anybody?
I
No one?
didn't. That's
Oh,
what I
you-
said before.
Yeah, you
I
told me you
wanted to
didn't
hear what people's experience was, because the first time I went, it wasn't well attended, but there may be opportunities, since, we're supposed to implement a urban art program plan, and this festival, whatever it is very much an urban art program plan type of a thing. So rather than just say, okay, that's their thing, this is our thing, we should at least talk to each other and see whether there's an opportunity to collaborate, even if it means making modifications in the way this event looks. Maybe it doubles up with an open studio tour. Maybe something else happens, like a big opening for something. We don't know. I think you're right. The discussion should happen, and maybe it won't go anywhere, but let's do it.
The discussion, like we could invite people who run Galleria, to invite people who are in charge of Americana, to invite businesses to see how much involvement in their production or whatever, to invite artists. So for the discussion, it should be people from all different walks who could be influential in creating, and their ideas of how much support they can give us. And then thus, from there on, it might be an idea that we might even, it might not work well. But it helps to get involved. And to have that discussion is the beginning of anything that needs to be done. So then we'll take it from there when we have more staffing and more time.
So one thing I'd recommend is, I think it's important to have that discussion with a lot of different entities, but I would hate for us to kind of hold our plan hostage for third parties. I mean, we need to define what we as a commission want to do. And we have a pretty short timeline to do that in so that we can get this to council with good recommendations so they can hopefully approve it and we can start implementing. So I think it's important to have that, let's have that discussion, but we also need to define, what is it that we want? And even if we're not ready to fully define it, we can still put an event in the plan so that's our intent. But we still, that gives us time to reach out to the third parties, get confirmations, bring on a consultant. Maybe the consultant has their own ideas to suggest.
Chairperson, is that okay? I mean, it's just a suggestion because I really love the open tour studios, open studio tours. I always say it the wrong way. Because at least that involves but with the bus, that would kind of map all of our artists, and we could create a roster of all the artists that we have. So in a way, it is a, not to use the word signature event, but it is a thing that signifies our artists in the community. It makes the artists happy, and there would be a showcasing of all the artists we have. So even they can go and find different stores to see, negotiate with them to have their art even presented. But it would be mapping and traveling all over Glendale where art is, from studios to artists' homes, the way we did it before. We did it before with $5,000 the first time, and we did it again, as I said, with a half-time staff and commissioners all involved. So it is doable, I think.
I have a question about that. How well attended was that, and what's the demographic, or I guess the types of people that are attending? Who are they?
Well, I think it was, I don't have numbers. I can contact the person who helped us, the staff person, and get you the numbers. But it was very well attended, and we started from Brand, Library and Central, and then the bus would take all over. We had more than 75 or 85 artists and locations. You would be surprised. We stopped, there were short stops that people kind of got acquainted. They didn't spend the whole day for the events, but they kind of mapped the artists that we had. And some of them even got together and they did their mutual exhibits in their homes or in any spot that they found. I can get the numbers if you're interested. But
approximately,
it was very well accepted in the community, that I know.
Is it approximately like 100 people, 500 people? I'm trying to see the approximately.
I cannot tell you.
Like how many buses were being used, I guess?
We used, again, on the exact numbers, definitely we had the morning one and the afternoon ones, and they were going back and forth and picking up people. And some people used their own cars, but those who didn't want to do it, I can give you the numbers next session when we meet. It's a good thing to know. But nonetheless, it was very successful.
Could we,
I can't remember that event.
Chair
I have even the map.
could we just recap where we are right now? Like, do we have stuff written down already for what's going into the plan? Just like what we have checked off? Where are we?
Sure.
What do we got?
Help us out, Nikki.
As I mentioned, moving public art and events to the top as number one. The categories that I mentioned before, so performances or performance series, became neighborhood arts, then citywide arts as categories, events, which I would put the annual public event as well as potentially coordinating on the Open Arts and Music Festival under that. And then lastly, permanent art.
So what we could do is move beyond the box to citywide then.
Yes. And then
So
the
neighborhood arts
Adams,
and citywide
yeah,
could be temporary.
and then Adams would fall under neighborhood arts.
Yeah.
And under there, I would put a bullet about expand into 1 to 2 other neighborhoods per year moving forward.
You have 5 categories?
I had 5. Yes.
Performance arts,
Performance series,
arts. Well, you can just say performance arts probably, yeah.
Performing arts, can we?
Performing arts, right? Because that
oh,
could
okay,
be,
got it.
could be one, it's not always a series, right? Neighborhood arts, citywide arts, landmark arts, or landmark, or you said permanent?
Permanent and then events.
And then events. Art events, we should probably
Does
call it.
that kind of
art events.
capture,
I like that, arts events.
Arts
We're
events.
gonna get arts into each one of these.
Arts happenings. How about happenings? Can we say happenings? Arts happenings.
It's a little bit obscure. It's gonna
Okay.
make you ask a question to
Is
figure
it
out what
too-
you're talking about.
It's 260s. Happenings.
and then on staffing, which would be number 2, I have to change the top bullet from build roster of arts consultants. I think it would be number 1, create an RFP for consultant services to oversee public art implementation.
Temporary consultants, so.
Temporary, and yeah, and maybe consultants.
Maybe short-term, long-term.
Short-term, long-term, okay.
Like short-term for the consultant, and then maybe higher FT administrator could become, well,
Yeah,
I don't want to
because-
say long-term, but, you know,
You don't want it to seem like we're willing to get rid of the idea of the permanent person, because that's
Yeah.
essential.
yeah.
Right, and I think that also, when you look at like number 4, which is, number 4 now for me is inventory, the person that you hire as a consultant to help with the inventorying and the maintenance and all of that may be someone that you keep on a continual basis. So I think saying short-term and long-term consultants can encapsulate both of those things. And then the second would be to start the process of hiring the full-time administrator. And short-term, that would be creation of a job description and consulting with the commission on that. Number 3 is policy. First bullet point with roles and responsibilities review. I'm thinking that may be something we think about moving to midterm. Because we're going to be bringing on consultants to help us with the short-term goals. I think amendment to add a student member to the commission as a non-voting member. Keep approval and review of guidelines for interdepartmental arts projects. I don't know what direction we were given on development of cultural arts programming / policies with workflow. So I don't know if you want to keep that or scratch it.
What is that exactly?
I believe that would be if we were to create the position, if there would be a separate department or division of library arts and culture that is considered cultural arts. Would it have its own?
Separate from the administrator or the,
Well, as I mentioned at the retreat, we have adult services, we have children's services, but they're not necessarily separate departments of our department, but divisions. So I think that's what that's referring to, is if we have a division called cultural arts, maybe that's what we end up calling the position, if there's development of programming and policies underneath that person.
question. I don't know, as a administrator, we need somebody there or not, but Reflect Space kind of does that. It is both cultural, it includes whatever, goes on culturally and artistically, and in every possible way. Now, if you need the administrator also oversee what happens there is one thing, but already we do have that part created in the city. I don't know if the rest of you agree with it, but to me, it's already in place.
Right,
It could be expanded, but it's in place.
I think what this is referring to is more in terms of administrative policy. So in library arts and culture, for circulation, let's say, as a department, we have policies and procedures in place as part of our administrative policy. So I don't think that this necessarily should be on your work plan. Because if we were to hire a full-time administrator to oversee this. The administrative policy would be a function of our department, I think, to help establish that. And if it stays on here, I think it should be something that's mid to long-term, because our short-term goal is getting the person hired.
Right. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's just policy, you know?
One other recommendation I have is for approval and review guidelines. If we can, it's a little bit of wordsmithing, but I think it'll avoid some miscommunication down the line. If we can change that to define review and approval guidelines, only because I don't want the presumption to be that commission is 100% wants approval authority on every single project. But I think right now it's not defined.
Okay.
So, you know, on some, maybe we should have more of a role, maybe some we shouldn't have as much, but, you know, let's not start the conversation with asking for 100%, because I think
Okay.
that leaves a little bit ambiguous right now.
So I'll change that. And then also recommend 2% for public art development. Keep that on there. Define municipal role in Maryland Paseo project. I have a note to pull that out, and that would fall under the purview of the new director in their role. Yeah?
Is that the municipal role, is that the position, Shant, is you're filling a position to sit on the committee, right?
No, they brought me on just, so they had put out an RFP to invite design consultants who are going to do the construction and redesign of the Paseo, as well as a couple of the alleys. So in the selection process, because each of the consultants had to have a public art consultant as part of the team. So my role was simply just to help with all the other departments that were there in the selection of who to recommend to council. And that process is not completed. Our role is now over, so I'm not involved any further. But the department is working on making that recommendation to council. But beyond that, I don't have, at least I or the commission does not have an official role moving forward.
So what do you mean by municipal role? Our role in the municipal process? Is that what that means? Because we don't have a municipal role, right? Or, because it's
Yeah,
not very
we're not.
clear to me.
We're volunteers.
Maybe I can add some context to this, because I think one of the discussions was, before this Paseo project began, we had talked about wanting to focus funds in certain areas, and we thought the Paseo was a small enough area where we can have more of an impact.
To activate
So we
it,
had
yeah.
that discussion prior to the Paseo project kind of going into high gear. So now that there's probably going to be construction for, let's say, a year, possibly maybe more, and we're not going to be able to really use that space or activate it in any way, it was more of, I think, defining, once it's completed, how much is it going to be driven through department funds? How much will the Arts and Culture Commission be able to do? Which, you know, even the answer to that, I don't think we're going to have for a long time.
So they should probably go like to midterm goals then, right? Probably. Because it is
Sure.
gonna, I
Yeah,
forgot, it's
probably
gonna be
long-term.
completely, like for a year and a half or 2 years, it's gonna be completely unusable, right?
Maybe define the commission's role in the Arts Off Paseo project as a midterm goal. So that'll be after, possibly after construction.
Find the commission's role, right? That makes sense.
You know, I'm really, based on my past experience being on city advisory committees, particularly the downtown specific plan, which I was on that committee, I'm really concerned about us not being at the table when key decisions are made. I'm really worried about it, because it seems like these things just move forward, and we need to make sure that whatever is happening from this point forward, that we know what it is, and we know whether or not we need to be involved, and if we need to be involved, that we are involved. I don't know how to accomplish that, but I'm concerned about waiting on that. I think somehow we have to be involved in this thing from the get-go, even if we're sitting at the table silent, because the subject hasn't come up yet. You know, I'm basing that comment on some really disappointing experiences I've had in the past.
I do think the define, review, and approval of guidelines for interdepartmental art projects kind of encapsulates that,
Okay,
honestly.
so that's gonna
Because it's basically
clarify.
saying that we want in these interdepartmental projects to be part of the discussion that takes place, you know? So I think
Okay.
that actually does
Okay.
sort of,
So it'll be specified. It won't be a generality. It'll say the commission is going to be involved in X with respect to the Paseo.
well, I think the the recommendation here is that we create guidelines so that we are involved.
Okay.
Is that the way the rest of you would take that?
I guess that'll be one example to share of an example of an opportunity.
But that's kind of an immediate issue right now, as Commissioner Vidor was saying, right? I think this happening right now, they're talking about what they're gonna do with Paseo. So I think somehow we should find out what are the bodies involved? You know more, but your closest. What city entities are involved in the Paseo process?
It would be, economic development's kind of driving it, I think, and involves some members of Parks Department, and involves Planning Department, Transportation,
Works.
Public Works.
Everybody.
And,
Everybody's in there.
and both of
Library, Arts,
us.
and Culture.
Yeah, I was there too.
But you're still part of it, right? Or
Right.
yes.
Correct.
So you're still attending the meetings.
Well, right now, they're putting did they get it approved? I don't know if it got approved
No,
yet.
I think they're
through
still going to
council.
make a recommendation to council
Yeah.
on which consultant to move forward with.
Yeah, once they select the consultant, then they'll put it out to bid for a contractor. But part of, I think the consultant they chose, part of their design process involved a public art person with the project.
Yeah, I would imagine the public art consultant would probably reach out to commissioners to get feedback and ideas. But that's something that staff can clarify, but that would be an expectation I think is reasonable.
I think we need.
The public arts person working on that should align themselves with the master art plan, right? That's critical because this is the art plan is for the whole city, and they should be aligned with that, right? So somehow we need to make sure that happens.
And many of the consultants mentioned it during, they're very well aware that the
Yeah.
plan just passed. And just like all of the plans, the South Glendale plan, the downtown specific plan, these are all things they'll be looking at. But I'm sure staff can clarify between now and then at least some of the ideas of how we can be involved, along with the process of, all the review and approval guidelines for interdepartmental.
And they reached out to me to involve us. So she came, Jennifer Hiramoto, who's Senior Administrative Supervisor of Economic Development, whatever her title is. She reached out and asked me to be involved, and then suggested someone from Arts and Culture Commission sit in as well. So we're definitely on their radar, and I think another thing that helps is they may reach out to us to help fund some of it, in which case, obviously, we would be involved through the things that like one of the things she talked to me about Arts and Culture Commission being involved with / funding, I don't know, we didn't really get into it too much, was signage and things that would be kind of, I don't want to use the word signature, but the thing that would draw you into the area.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Artified.
Right, but giving us the more high-profile parts of the project, which would be funded or led by the Arts and Culture Commission.
Yeah, but funding is easy. Everybody would like the funding. So for them to have the commission to participate as part of the funding is not an achievement in our part. In our part is that with the funding comes the commissioner's view on it as well.
Absolutely.
But I don't see that kind of so far, but we'll see how it goes. So if they want the funding, it needs to be commission itself should be involved too, I think.
Right, and I believe we have been from the start, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned at the previous meeting, but it was great to see from the start of a project that they reached out to us and invited us and made sure that commission was a part of it. Certainly, if funding is required, we will be a part of it.
Absolutely.
But I think this, just to clarify though on this point, I think approval and review guidelines is more of when it's not a commission project. What is our role, if any? And that needs to be clarified when other city departments are
Right.
funding projects and launching different things across the city.
And maybe we could now develop some standing items, like since you're repping, like maybe every commission meeting, if you have something to report, we put it on there and you say there's nothing new to report, or you tell us what is new to report, so that it's always kind of out there being, on the docket for consideration. I don't
Excellent
mean to
idea.
make more, to give you an assignment, Nikki, but, it just seems like, since right now you're our person in that group, that we need to keep track.
Are you in the commission? You're not in the commission capacity, you're in the library capacity at those
Library.
meetings, right?
Right.
Can you also, yeah?
Yes.
Or let's a little bit,
LA Library or, no, Library Arts and
Lightly
Culture.
touching upon the fact.
you're a little
Well,
bit ambiguous. in
She's
the-
staff, but she's representing Library Arts and Culture,
Correct.
not the
I
library,
was-
the
yeah,
stacks.
I was there representing the commission, yeah. I'm the
Right,
commission
no,
chair,
but
assistant
your
chair.
report, what I'm asking is that you tell the commission what's going on from your perspective, not that you represent the commission, just this is what happened, or this is what I, heard or did, or these are issues that are coming up that could be important to you, that type of thing.
I think that's something may require more discussion, because, one of our next items that we have to get to is appointing somebody to DSP committee, for example, and, if these commission meetings become about other departments' projects, and we have 10 of them that we serve on, we're going to spend a lot of time not talking about Arts and Culture Commission projects. But I think, just like I did, during our commissioner comments period, I reported out that I was serving on this committee because I wanted to make sure that my colleagues knew. I think it's incumbent on all of us as well, for any committee we're on, that we just make that part of the routine. And maybe that could be part of the guidelines for new commissioners when they come on, that's kind of an expectation of commissioners to do. It will be on each commissioner's discretion, although I'm sure commissioners are also welcome to ask questions that you'll know when we have gotten an update frequently enough. But it's definitely important to keep everyone informed.
Okay, so number 4 and number 5, we didn't really make any changes, but I don't know that we discussed those yet, so I don't know if there were things that the commission would like to see added or edited, with the exception under number 5, marketing and branding. I did add with public relations -- community presentations, a note into the specific neighborhoods. And then I also added a bullet of engaging local businesses. So those are the notes I have to make some edits for you.
I'd like to make a recommendation, because the meat of the plan is really the public art that people are going to see, touch, experience, feel. That's at the end of the plan, which will be at the front. But, for example, inventory ID maintenance, I feel like that's more of a really detailed role definition of the consultant in the short term, or the role of the full-time administrator. I think it's a little bit more than we may need in a work plan. If maybe that could be merged into our expectations of the full-time administrator's role.
Okay.
To be developing and defining, developing the list of existing art, inventory. I imagine that's going to be part of their role as well.
Okay.
So maybe we take that off of the actual work plan and just summarize in like one line under the roles and responsibilities of the staffer, whether that's the consultant or the long-term.
Let's go back to the branding part. That's the part I think that I was confused. On the bullet number 2, it says, create an Art and Culture Commission Board.
Brand.
I read it wrong. It says brand.
That explains it. No Arts and Culture Commission Board. Yeah, I think that was related to the,
Okay.
which is similar to some of the events we've sponsored as well, where you'll go to the event and you won't know that it's an Arts and Culture Commission sponsored event, and creating more of a brand around it. I don't think we've very well defined it yet. I mean, we have a logo, that's the city logo with Arts and Culture Commission, I think.
But on
Branding
some
on
of
it,
the
but-
events, it was very small somewhere underneath, and then there was the big thing over that it was not clear, which I made a comment prior to this on different occasions.
Just to talk a little bit about number 4. So I guess we must have spoken a lot about all the items in number 4 at the retreat, since it kind of got its own. I kind of like Sean's idea of not making it a big bullet item. But I'm not sure where it belongs. Does it belong under the full-time administrator?
Inventory maintenance.
What I'm thinking is maybe if I have a bullet under staffing, that's RFP for short and long-term consultants to oversee public art implementation or whatever wording I come up with. A subcategory under that could be a consultant to focus on inventory
Right.
and
ID,
maintenance of
yeah.
existing art, or something like that, under that category.
Yeah, I see identification as something different because inventory and maintenance of existing is something we know we need to do, and it's a very administrative, kind of functional task, but identifying those places and components of the community that can be made into art is really more part of the plan. The other two are a different, I think they're different. It's a different category.
Yes.
That raises the good point, too, that maybe the second bullet, maybe the third as well, I could incorporate somehow into the first category of the neighborhood and the citywide arts, identifying places to
Identifying.
put them, right?
That would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounded, that makes
Some of
sense.
this is presumed
That's-
as well, though. I mean, in order to choose the location, we have to have the location.
We need to know what it might be, it's like,
The possibilities.
yeah, and there's a great opportunity to involve the community in that particular activity, which would be nice to do.
Okay.
But this does come from, I think, well, the first one I think comes from Barbara's recommendation because we have art out there and we don't really have a master database, and somewhere it's not being maintained, but we don't really have the list to know who to go to and talk to about it either. So they're definitely important.
Okay.
So then we'd be narrowed down to public arts programs or some variation of that, staffing, policy, and marketing and branding, is that?
Yep.
In terms of staffing, the first one as well, the first bullet, build roster of arts consultants and artists. Can that also just be part of the role of the full-time administrator? That way it's not hanging out there, because I'm looking at it from perspective of someone from the public seeing it. They may think we're going to hire an FT administrator and we need to hire someone else to do that other role. So if it's kind of something that we're expecting to do, it might be better to put it under
Yeah.
their role. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we taking staffing off of the plan?
No, staffing will stay, but the first bullet, build roster of arts consultants and artists, that one will go under hire FT administrator.
Okay, along with the entire inventory ID maintenance section?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I wonder if don't we need to do that right now?
Okay.
Have a roster of arts consultants before we actually hire an art consultant?
But I
Even
think
for the
the-
short term?
Well, I think in the short term, so I'm thinking the first bullet will be hire a consultant. Second bullet will be hire FT administrator with that list. So because so to hire the consultant, I'm sure we're going to put out, either an RFP or something like that. And we're going to get people applying for that role. But I wouldn't want to hire an art consultant and ask them to build me a database of other art consultants that do similar work to them, because they're probably not going to do the best job of building that database. But a full-time administrator would, because those are assets for them.
No, okay, so, no, I think, so you're looking at it as kind of a database, an archive of some sort. I'm looking at it as something that, here are the 15 art consultants that we could approach to do our work for us right now. That's how I kind of looking at it.
For the projects.
For our short-term projects, yeah.
But that's something that the consultant we're planning to hire in the interim before we get a permanent person, that would be something that they could help do, right? Develop
Well-
this list.
No, but I'm saying we need that list before we hire that person.
Oh,
So we hire the right person to do the job. Instead of leaving it, I mean,
I thought this was a separate thing, like the consultants you're talking about are people who are going to help us build the plan and evolve it, whereas this consultant is basically our stopgap measure until we get the full-time. So it's not really, they're helping to develop a database is not necessarily that this consultant we're planning to hire is going to pick the consultants. They're going to
No.
right? Or
You're thinking, I think you're thinking more project-based. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm thinking-
Who's going to do the Beyond the Box program, or who's going to do the...
Right, so we could put
Open
an
Studio
RFP
tour.
out and just wait for people to show up, right? Or we could be more proactive and find a list. I was talking to Chuck today, right? Get a list of consultants in the area who maybe we want to approach and speak to them and say, you know, hey, maybe you should apply to this RFP because we would like to work with you because you're doing the kind of things we want to see in our city. So we're more proactive instead of just waiting, just sending something out, waiting for whoever shows up to show up.
Commissioner Shagan, I'll tell you my fear. So when I see build roster of arts consultants and artists, I'm thinking that's time we're going to spend to build a list before we actually do anything. So what I would rather see is, as an expectation of the consultant we bring on, that they already have to have that deep knowledge of kind of the art scene. Which consultants are out there? What type of work do they do? Who can I then go after and attract to then do one of these projects as an upfront expectation? And if you're not that person, you're not right for this role. But if we say build a roster, you know, then that means that's time we're losing.
You're talking about the full-time
No,
administrator.
I'm thinking so let's say council approves our recommendation. And Jack,
Leave it out for anybody to respond, but to have a list of people that we can actually, then we can speak to, say, you know, you're a good person to apply, to come to work.
for this job that we're going to put as job 1 on our work plan to hire a consultant, that we want to have preliminary information or intel on that? I'm confused about what we're doing.
I think what we'll have to do is
Sure, I can't explain what I'm saying. It seems very clear to me.
I think you'll have, well, first from a legal perspective, we have to put out the RFP.
I'm
We
not
need to-
saying we're not putting out
So I think it's
RFP,
going to be
right.
incumbent on all of us to do that type of, you know, research and outreach to find those people, say, hey, I think you'd be really good for
So
this.
this is what I'm saying.
Assuming you're not involved in the hiring.
That's what I'm
and choosing,
saying,
then-
Okay.
right? And there are a number of people who I think could be very well
We're going
qualified.
to fan out and
We need, and
It'll be on
contribute our
us.
ideas.
to do that, we should have a list of people that are possible potential arts administrators or art consultants who we could work with. That's what I'm saying. We should have that. Doesn't have to be 500 people. It could be 15 people in the area who do things like this. That's
Basically, the commission would choose and decide the consultant, and then that consultant would take care of whatever needs to be done. This is what he wants.
no.
It is, because we look
yeah, I
at
think-
what the roster is, we choose from those, with all the RFPs, the one that we think is good, and then that person would be doing the
I'm
job.
saying we have to make sure that we get the right people to
That's what
apply
I'm
to the
saying.
RFP.
Yes.
Before we hire somebody, we make sure the right people apply for the job. That's
So
what I'm saying.
if I could summarize, so I think
Please.
Commissioner
Maybe-
Shagan
hopefully you
first.
understood.
I think I did. So Commissioner Shagan first made the recommendation that we need a consultant in the immediate term because we can't wait till the full-time administrator is brought on. And so I think what you're saying is to make sure that we have a very deep talent pool that applies for that position.
Yes.
The consultant position.
Yes.
Yes,
We need a
Yes.
list of potential
choose.
prospects.
exactly.
So my only word of caution will be that, so I'm assuming 2 commissioners will be involved in the selection process to make to filter through the applications that come in, make a recommendation to the commission. So I think if we develop a list, we're kind of getting ahead of the hiring process, and that may create some issues. So what I'd recommend, so what I'd recommend is we each kind of need to take that on as an individual role, assuming you're not involved in that selection process, to find those artists that you're going to push once the RFP's out, say, hey, this RFP's out, I think you'd be great for it, you should apply. But that person, then that means you can't be involved in the selection process as well. But I get what you're saying. We want a deep pool. You want to get the best consultant to be
Make
selected.
sure, you know,
We don't end up with
we
two, and we
want to
choose
make sure the right
whatever.
people know of this position.
And so
And so
that
what the
consultant comes
process
on.
is, I understand what you're saying. So there's a process that could define that. That would be, I'm not sure what the process
Because
is.
if the commission has a list, that's a public list, and so that's you're kind of we're not honoring a fair and open process at that point.
Yeah, to pick the consultant we hire to start doing this work for us, with the RFP or queue goes out and a bunch of people apply, and, you know, if we're working behind the scenes to say, hey, pal, you know, you should apply, that's our business, but who selects? Who will handle the RFP and make the, who does the RFP selection?
Staff would work on that.
Right, so that's, yeah. So,
Traditionally, in the past, we would, staff would be involved, you'd appoint two commissions to like a temporary committee, two commissioners, sorry. So two commissioners would then, staff would first review all the applications, and then there would be a recommendation for a few that we would interview perhaps, and that's when the commission, two commissioners would get involved.
really?
That group would probably make a recommendation, comes back to the commission.
Okay.
Commission then makes a recommendation that eventually goes back to council, and council would have the final say.
Right. I didn't realize that we as individual commissioners would be involved in that
We
process.
we
at
did
all.
before.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
It's just, how can we make sure that we get to all the good people who know the job? Because sometimes, again, throughout these years, I've seen we ended up with only 2 people participating, and choosing one out of the 2 naturally was not.
One difference too is now we do have a marketing administrator on the staff who, because I think this is more of a marketing problem. It's not
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know, we just have to make sure that
Okay.
it reaches as many artists as possible.
That's right.
Obviously, the public art master plan, you know, getting approved is a big deal. So I think this is a good opportunity for, you know, potential consultants. So hopefully they're paying attention already. And, you know, we have to do a good job of getting the word out there, make sure we have a deep enough talent pool that applies. And if we don't, then you put out the RFP again and you start over. But that's something for, I think, down the road. But I think if I understood correct, so you'd have a
Yes.
consultant comes on perhaps for 6 months, perhaps a year, but at that point, the director will make that determination of how soon the full-time administrator needs to come in conjunction with council, to take over kind of the operation of all the projects. But even that consultant would then go and we'd probably have an RFP for each individual bucket. So if there was a neighborhood
Yeah,
arts
because I
program in a
think there are
certain area
different
that's new. Yeah,
Different qualifications, right, for different types of art that you may put in the public space, so.
great.
And the process, this process, I think we should make when we select this person to do to be consultant, should be more like the process for the master plan, that is recommendation, like maybe the 3 top, make it have 2 people from the commission talk to everybody or look at all the applications, but select 3 top candidates, and those 3 top candidates, the whole commission looks at,
That's right.
rather than just one person filtering up,
That's-
I would
that's right.
recommend.
That's
A little
what
bit
we have
different
done
than we've
before.
done in the past.
Kind of, it's almost the
Well,
same.
is that,
If it is all 5, it would have to be a public agendized meeting, so you'd have to make consultant apply and do an interview in public on TV. So, you know, it may not be the best way to filter it down. Traditionally, what we've done is, I think staff narrows it down to 3 that get interviewed. 2 commissioners will join staff.
That's right.
Those commissioners with the staff will make a recommendation. The 5 commissioners then review the recommendation. But all commissioners would have, you know, commissioners would know who's applied and who was chosen not to be selected or recommended, I should say.
the master plan process was a little different though, right? We were all involved in the whole process.
No, it was done that way. Karar Sharikian and myself were on the committee. We met with staff. We interviewed 3 consultants that were narrowed down after the full pool came in, and then we made a recommendation to commission. Commission then vetted and debated over the selected person, consulting team, and then after that, we made a recommendation, went to council, and then council approved.
Yeah.
We had people present here though, didn't we? Okay, maybe we can talk about that next time. But,
So, kind of judging from where we're at, I think we've had a pretty healthy discussion. I just want to propose a couple options. Do we feel comfortable, come back the next meeting, kind of do another round?
Yes.
Would you like a study session in between? Any preference, one or another? I mean, I think we've gotten
like
pretty
a
far.
retreat, you mean another?
Another retreat,
A
yeah.
retreat?
Even though it doesn't sound like, you know, it's like something you don't look forward to, but I think it's something we need because we need to get into the weeds a little bit, I think, and it's hard to do it in this environment. So I would be willing to do it if you thought it was necessary. I would like to know what staff thinks, though.
I'd vote for a retreat. I would vote for one.
I mean, I think we can accommodate whatever the commission feels is best. The new director is starting a week from tomorrow, so Friday the 28th. So I would assume that if we were to schedule one, it would be after he starts, so he could be involved as well. I think, I can edit this document, but if there's a lot more discussion that you feel needs to be had, then maybe the retreat is the way to go.
I think what we'll have to do is, unlike the first retreat, it has to be focused on the short-term plan, the work plan. It can't go into kind of exploring the whole world in how we did it last time, which was good though, because it helped us narrow it down. So maybe it could even be a shorter one.
Maybe like a morning or an afternoon
Yeah,
or something like
yeah.
that.
Not as long as last time. And then that'll help us at least kind of refine it after you've already kind of condensed this meeting.
Okay.
But again, for the public as well, we won't be voting on it until it's brought back at a regularly scheduled
Okay.
meeting in October, if that gives us enough time.
Okay. Well, if it's a shorter meeting, maybe it'll be a little more doable than a whole day.
Great.
Do they need to move that? No. Okay, we just have to get approval from city manager's office to have another special meeting. So that would be next step, and then getting it scheduled with you.
Great. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, then we have our next regularly scheduled meeting to continue the
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, I'll get started on editing this ASAP.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. That was great discussion. Next item, please.
Item 5A2, motion selecting Arts and Culture Commissioner to serve on Stakeholders Committee and provide input for the downtown specific plan update.
Chair Sahaki and Commissioners, City staff, the Community Development and Planning Department requests one representative from the Design Review Board, the Planning Commission, and the Arts and Culture Commission to serve on a Stakeholders Committee and provide input for the downtown specific plan update. The draft amendments of this DSP will be prepared by the end of this year for council adoption in March of 2019. The time commitment would involve one or a maximum of 2 night meetings on either a Monday or a Tuesday to be determined, although they mentioned that an inaugural meeting is tentatively scheduled for October 15 or 16, 2018. There are a number of guidelines about what the downtown specific plan update is looking to do. There is no fiscal impact associated with this.
Great, thank you for that. So we wanted to agendize this so that kind of commissioners can discuss and make it more of a democratic process for who either wants to or will be appointed one way or another to serve on this committee. But it is an important committee, so we wanted to open it up to the commissioners.
So we could have appoint somebody or nominate somebody? Is that
Yep,
how it goes?
I think
Okay. So,
Can I just ask exactly what is the plan? The downtown specific plan is, it's not the Arts of Paseo, is it? Or is it
No, it's
overall,
bigger.
it's all of
It's
downtown?
downtown. All of downtown.
can I
And-
make my,
Yeah, I mean, all of downtown, meaning doing, what is the point of the commission? That's what I want to find out, figure out.
So it's similar to the South Glendale plan that was presented to us a couple meetings ago, but the city's in the process of reviewing and making amendments. And so kind of piggybacking on our discussion we just had as well, they are looking to involve the different commissions, and so it's an opportunity for us to be involved in that process.
This is like a long-term change to downtown. It isn't like something going on next year, but it's like 5-10 year kind
Yeah,
of.
long-term vision for downtown.
Long vision, okay. That's it.
okay, so alphabetically going, I'll start. I think I would like to have our chairperson, commissioner, or chairperson Sean Sargent to do that, because I do believe that he represents not only the city and the commission, also he's well aware of the school district as well. So his role generally in the community, I think, would give a broader and more effective thing to be part of that. So,
Second. Oh, is it a vote? Is it a vote?
It was a
Oh, it was
nomination.
a motion. Oh, okay. I don't know
So could we vote on that? or
I should have been
no?
more direct by democratic, I meant for someone else to take on the
Unless
mantle. but-
somebody else wants to nominate, unless somebody else wants to
Do you
nominate.
want to do it? I guess that's the first.
Well, if any commissioner really wants to do it, I would love to share the option and have them do it, but I'm happy to take on the role if nobody is hungry for it.
Okay,
I'm okay. Yeah.
if not, so I see the nods.
I did my bit on the strategic plan. I'm done.
Okay, so do we vote right now?
So I
Yeah.
guess we need a motion.
Okay.
So the motion is that I would like to have Chairperson Sean Sahakian to be the designee.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioners Hovhanessian?
Yes.
Oshagan?
Yes.
Sidorian?
Yes.
Vice Chair Vidor?
Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian?
Yes. Next item, please.
5A3, motion approving co-sponsorship of Brand Associates Real Art Movie Program.
Chair Sahakian, Commissioners, City Staff, the Brand Associates request that the Arts and Culture Commission be listed as a co-sponsor for a film screening of a documentary film called Faces Places. This film is about public art, and prolific director and pioneer filmmaker of the French New Wave, Agnès Varda, teams up with a renegade traveling companion, street photographer, muralist, and installation artist known as JR on a whimsical tour across the French countryside. What's interesting is this documentary is about public art. The duo travel in a special truck with a portable photo booth. They take pictures along the way, and then they display these pictures in a large format as they go. There will be a panel discussion following the screening, which takes place on Thursday, November 8th at the Brand Library Recital Hall. The panelists for this discussion will include the Brand Library Art Gallery's exhibition supervisor, Shannon Curry Holmes, and artist and Commissioner Ara Oshagan. There is no fiscal impact associated with this report, but again, it is a request from the Brand Associates. The film is specifically about public art and a unique way to approach viewing public art and talking about public art. So there you have it.
Great, thank you for that update. And this opportunity was brought to us by Commissioner Vidor. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to get exposure, but I think traditionally we haven't done many co-sponsorships with the commission. So I thought it was important that all five of us discuss it and officially vote on it. But Commissioner Vidor, did you want to add anything to?
No, when we first thought about this, we haven't done real art in a long time, and the mission of the film series is to get limited release films in and that have specific topics that relate to the arts and life, and that they be done in a situation where we can have a discussion afterwards. And we thought this would be, the group wanted to have kind of a celebration that the thing got approved, the urban art program plan, and that this would be a way to say, like a little PR going on here, to celebrate that the urban art plan has been adopted. We'd like to show this film and maybe get some steamrolling through the screening of the film. Like get them in the room and then lock the door. No, I'm just kidding. And we've actually reached out to Danielle Brazel, who is the executive director of the Los Angeles Arts Council, appointed by Eric Garcetti, and she lives in Glendale, and I haven't heard back from her yet, but we thought, a three-person panel would be good, and to get another, two Glendale-focused people here who know the plan, and then she knows planning but isn't part of our plan. So somebody like that if she can't do it. So the idea is to use this as a way to attract people to the plan, really, and get them like another opportunity to just get them informed. So the organization is looking for publicity, no money, no anything, just talk it up, because the reach is so much bigger in LAC than it is in the Brand Associates. So that was it.
Can I make a motion? Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve the co-sponsorship of the Brand Associates Real Art Movie Program.
Great. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Great. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Derhovanesian,
Yes.
Oshagan,
Yes.
Zadorian,
Yes.
I'm supposed to abstain?
Vice,
I'm supposed to abstain, I guess. Chuck is like, sorry.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Do I have to abstain because I'm in the associates? Oh, okay. Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian.
Yes.
Item 6, Commission Staff Comments.
We've talked a lot today, but is there any comments to add? Great. This might be the quickest comments period. Well, thank you to all the commissioners because we were very productive today and also in our special meeting prior. And looking forward to getting our work plan done. Next item, please.
Item 7, Written Communications.
Yes, we have one written communications from our Assemblywoman Laura Friedman, who, as you know, will be launching the 43rd Assembly District's photography competition. And just to briefly summarize the letter, she is requesting Commission's assistance in the promotion of the competition. And thank you, Chuck, for including that in your presentation earlier. And the October 5th gallery event in Adams Hill through the regular publication of the City of Glendale, both online and print, and the use of display materials such as easels that could be used to show the artwork during the gallery event. And she thanks us for our dedicated work for arts, community, and culture in Glendale. So it would be great if staff could follow up with her and make sure we support her in every way we can. We appreciate all she's doing for us in the State Assembly. And with that, that's the only written communication I have. And
Could I make a comment about that?
I think we'll have to hold it for
Okay.
next meeting.
All right.
And we are adjourned.